Hello, I'm Richard Raffan. In this video I'm going to talk about making these long thin tubes. They're made out of green timber. I want them to warp. I spent some years trying to work out how to do this, and then the penny dropped. They do present quite a few little problems if you want to decorate them, because it's not very easy turning cross grain on this diameter. And so that's what you can see. So this is the longest of those tubes, and you can see that it's bent that way, and what's happening is that these growth rings here are trying to straighten themselves out. So these pieces come out of a log, rather like this. It's been sliced across the trunk, as you can see, and this came from, where are we? That way up, from there. So we've got the bark, the sap, top and bottom, and I cut it very close, as close as I could to the pith, because the nearer the pith and the tighter these rings are, the more the wood is going to move as it dries out. So that one came from there, this one came from down here somewhere, and the other came sloping. I can't pin them there. But the other one came at an angle. I can't quite remember where that came from now, but it came at a bit of an angle. It might even have been up there somewhere. But that's where these are coming from. So the next thing is to saw this into suitable blanks. So when I come to cut out a blank, I've got the heart shapes there coming out from the pith. That ends there, another one which ends up there, another one about there, another one around there. So what I want now is to cut a blank a square which will look like a centre work blank, but in fact the grain will be running across it rather than the length of it. Now this ruler is just about the width I want anyway, and I'm looking for the tightest grain I can get, the tightest curve, which will give me more movement in the final piece. So I can come up here, and then I also want some other ones out of it, so I might be better off coming up this way. Well, if I go that way, I'm going to get one, maybe a little short one up there. No, I'm going to be better out this way, I think. I'll go there, so I'll have a white top and bottom, sap top and bottom of this. And then I can get another one out here. And possibly even another small one. If I want to do a little short one, then I might that will make a little pencil pot, green turned pencil pot. Now I want to cut the ends off here to get rid of any splits, which there don't seem to be any. No splits. No foot brake on this bandsaw. Right, so to the lathe. The blank goes between centres. Now, yet again, I must emphasize this is not centre work. The grain is running this way. You can see the growth rings. So the tree, when it was in the growing tree, this was up. This is the end grain. So the cuts you're going to use are essentially the ones you'd use for cutting bowls, for face work. I'm going to rough down this with a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, which is what I would normally do on a bowl. You can also use a bowl gouge. And in this case the spindle gouge is more convenient, it's got a more convenient edge. And as usual, when it slips, just tighten up the tailstock. This is cross grain, so when you go off the end you'll break it away, so you need to come in from the end. I just want to get it down to the cylinder, or very close to the cylinder. So it's still a little bit of a flat here. People often ask why I use a spindle gouge for roughing down like this, and one of the reasons is that when I'm holding the tool with my hand over the top like that, with some deep fluted tools, I used to find that the shavings would bind in the deep flute and they were so difficult to get out. I actually kept a dental tool to prise them out. So the advantage of the shallower gouge is that the shavings get away faster when you're in a real hurry. Now I have what will be the base in this end. So truing up the end, using the wing of the tool just to stroke the surface, and then turn it over, get the bevel rubbing and go back into the cone. Now you'll find it's useful to have the hole made by the cone there at the next couple of stages, so just keep that. To set the base up for drilling, I've got the base here which I've just trued, still got the central hole from the tailstock, from the tail center. That goes in there. Now I want this in obviously straight, so I've still got the tail center in here. Tighten that up, tighten this up, so the chuck is all nice and tight. And I now need to set up for the drilling. Now you have a couple of options for drillings. You can buy extensions which go into a Jacob's chuck, and you can have an extension on an extension. I've always found those a bit awkward to use. The drill tends to spin, that's why I've got two of these nuts, but I'm now using this piece which has a Morse taper in it, and that just goes straight into the tailstock, and that seems to work a lot better. I've got a couple of grub nuts there which hang on to the drill really well. And I'm going to run this at probably around, helps to run it forwards too. This is running at around 650. I've got a little extension to push the lock the tailstock better in position, and away we go. So that's as far as the tailstock will wind in. And from now on, it only goes in a centimetre at a time, about 3/8 of an inch, because the shavings build up. And one of the problems is that when they build up, especially if this is thin, as you back the drill out, because it's cross-grained, you suddenly end up with a short tube, which is not the idea. And so we go on down. Now this tube is about 230 deep, so I've got 20 or so plunges into the end grain. Now when I get a bit further down here, I need to know how far I've gone, and I'm going to mark on the drill where to stop. So it's quite nice to have a bit of weight in the bottom, so I'll leave around 30 millimeters, just over an inch, which means I go in 230, and up at this end I've got magnets, rare earth magnets, it's got 230. So I've still got a bit of margin for error there. And as you can see here, I've got this far to go. One more. And the whole thing is turned around onto a chuck. Now what I did forget to do was to do the rim, which is now much more difficult than it was. I'm going to use a 3/8 bowl gouge for that. Put the speed up a little bit. I could get at it later, but it's easier to do it here when there isn't a chuck in the way. Just sloped in very slightly. Right, so this now gets turned round onto another chuck. Now I'm going to use some long nose jaws. And I should check that you can see what's happening. Now the long nose jaws have some non-slip cloth around them, and it's quite tricky to get it on accurately, so I'm not going to take it off at this stage. I need to close the jaws very slightly. goes on enough to grip it, and then the tail center comes up, and that is why you left the original, or why I leave the original center there. And then having established that, then I can expand the other end just enough so it spins the wood. So having done the drilling, now get at the outside. Turning very small diameters cleanly is really quite difficult. I'm going to use the spindle gouge, 1/2 inch spindle gouge, which is a 3/8 flute, and just to give myself the best chance, I'm just going to go and regrind that. So come back up to around 1800, 16 it says. Up a little bit more, so it is 1800. So the aim now is to just get a nice clean surface on the cylinder. So I've got a very good grip of this tool, holding it into my side. And any force is involved, or any force involved is keeping the tool pressed on the rest, not against the wood. I don't want to cut off in, I'm just going to use the wing just to get in there. Still a little flat bit there from the saw marks, which I should really have taken off earlier. Otherwise that's not looking too bad, and it's relatively, I can tape it very slightly, it's relatively thick up on the rim on this one. So I'll just take a little bit more out of that section there. Now it's got a little kind of waste just there. Now I can try getting rid of that using shear scrapers. Just tilt it up on edge. And I'm watching the upper horizon up here. The finger here can be behind the rest, so that acts kind of jig. To help you move smoothly. And the less pressure you put against the wood, the better. Right, so that's got a pretty good line. Slight lump there at the bottom. Get rid of that. It's rattling very little, so that implies it needs more tailstock pressure. Right. A little lump there perhaps. And this probably look quite nice just as is, as a long thin piece. So I'm just going to sand that, and that will be that. Sanding it with 180 grits. Pretty wet wood, the dust is beginning to come off. The last thing here is to finish off the bottom, just turn that off. I'm going to do that with a small gouge, which I thought I had here. I didn't make a particularly good job of that rim, although that will be sanded later when I come to when these bend. The bottoms need to be redone. Now this time I'm going to take this off entirely. Now the grain is across, so with a little push as the lathe comes to a stop, the grain just severs. This is a relatively heavy one, and so the wall thickness here is, if we want to know, just a bit over 1/8. Oh no, it isn't it? Oh no, that's in 20ths. So you can have it in millimeters. 5 millimeters. Americans will have to work it out, I'm afraid. Right, so that can now go into the microwave, although I'm really tempted to put it back on the lathe and cut beads up it. I think I will. So this time I need something which will pick up most of the bottom. Happens that disc happens to be almost exactly the right size. Well, this is a first, so all kinds of exciting things could happen. Running very slightly out. To come back slightly that way. Oh, not that much. I meant to mention earlier, people will have noticed this little band-aid. I cut my finger honing the flute of the gouge, so at least we know that it's sharp. In fact, it was the flute of the gouge I was looking for just now, so yeah, you'll now see it in action. So this is going to be taking the gouge for a walk up the edge. So basically going to be a series of arcing, just taking the handle round in a little circle. We'll start from there. again. And the heartwood, that's a bit harder. Just up there. How many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a relief. And up there. Wasn't counting that time, not consciously. It's cut pretty cleanly, so I'll just go over that briefly with a bit of fresh 240 grit. I'm not too fussed as these beads aren't exactly the same. I've got a little bead cutter, but I just like doing it by hand, getting a bit of energy to them where they vary slightly. Is it. So this now goes into the microwave, and one this size I'll start it on 3 minutes, see what happens. Do not leave it unattended in the microwave in case you smell burning or see smoke. So it's going in on cook. Getting rolled around a bit inside the on the turntable. It's just a shade large for this oven. Now we've got 50 seconds to go, but it's beginning to smell. I'll just bring it up. Oh, and it's bubbling. So you can probably see the steam coming off. Ooh, that's hot. Down at the bottom. Yes, you wouldn't want to keep your hand over there, that's steam coming out. So that will dry off and then go into the oven for another probably 2 minutes. One which we saw earlier on, or which you saw in the introduction, it's done yesterday. Got gone slightly oval in the top. The trial one, which wasn't sanded, has walked much more dramatically, and that one looks as though it's beginning to go.